Thank you so much for coming on a Saturday morning. I know a lot of you would like to actually chill out in your house, enjoy the weekend, spend time with your family, but you're spending it with me. Yay. Thank you. So I hope you have been having a great IGDC so far. Yes, good IGDC? Yes, cool. And how many of you are all very familiar with Unity over here? Used Unity, that's fantastic. Who's absolutely new to Unity? Never used it before. Fantastic. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to be talking about the roadmap for what is coming ahead for Unity in the next coming quarter and in the next year. So for people who are very, very familiar with Unity, you would be following along. Used to Unity, you just kind of follow along. For people who are never used Unity, which is the 6 of you out there, it would be a good refresher because you can anticipate what you will have to learn coming in the coming months. So let's start right up. Quickly, there's a lot of things coming in the roadmap, and I have like 45 minutes time before I have to finish up. So I am going to go rush pretty fast. So and at the end, if there are any questions, I'll still hang out and you can ask all of the questions at that time. Sounds good? Fantastic. Quickly, I am Arvind Neelakanthan. I am the head of technology for the Indian subcontinent, and this is a roadmap that we also presented at Unite India 2019 last week. And it's kind of the same thing for the most part. Nothing has changed. But for people who have not attended it, this would be a good introduction. For people who have attended it, it's a good refresher. All right, let's get started right away. So this is a kind of a different roadmap talk because rather than just focusing on features, I'm also going to be talking about why did we make those features so that you understand what is going on inside Unity, why are we planning it this way, and so on. Fundamentally, there are 4 themes to it. So we have core and performance, which is all about how Unity is changing under the hood, which enables like amazing, like most possible performance that you could get out of your hardware. We're also talking about workflow and creation, where how does the editor serve you, and how to have end-to-end workflows inside your editor. We're also going to be talking about quality and fidelity, which means you can squeeze the maximum output with maximum productivity also. And when you're ready, you also want to go to the widest and broadest audience that you can, which you then talk about deploying and operating part of this talk. So packages, we are still very, very, very much committed to the 2 packages in the future Unity deployment, because early on, a lot of these Unity provided packages such as, let's say, Alembic, or if you're talking about render streaming, all of those were in GitHub or were in the asset store. Like if you had Cinemachine, for example, it used to be in the asset store, and we are trying to consolidate all of that in the package manager, because unless you own something and unless the packages are updated along with the Unity version, it really doesn't mean much. And we are very much committed to packages so that every package update that you're going to be getting from the Unity approved packages are always going to also work with the current Unity version that you're going to be using. DOTS, you must have heard a lot about it. DOTS, or Data Oriented Technology Stack, is pretty much the bedrock of what we are building a lot of new technologies on. And we are working to scale Unity for a large production, including AAA titles for both games and film. And of course, we're trying to build the end-to-end solutions to get your desired outcomes. We're not just here to build feature after feature after feature, because it doesn't make sense unless it actually ties all of your solutions in such a way that you're able to ship a product that is playable and enjoyable. So our vision of a future is really a broad spectrum with kind of, it's something like this. So we want to start off with end-user friendliness, like end user friendly application. So I'm going to be talking about the Unity application and the DOTS Unity application. And on top of that, we are going to have machine friendly features such as our DOTS architecture. We're also going to be talking about some of the hardware devices that we are going to be supporting, and of course entities. And then we are also going to be talking about human-friendly features, such as additions to the Unity editor, changes to how game objects are being prepared. We are also going to be talking about a very most often asked about feature called visual scripting. We'll also talk about how the human friendliness and the machine friendliness are going to be matching together when we are talking about the automated conversion flow, where your game objects that you have currently can automatically be converted to the entity component system or the dots architecture automatically. So what is the road ahead? So by default, so let's talk about the core and performance. So let's go through one feature at a time. So we're going to be introducing core Unity Live Link, which is a feature where you're able to connect any devices to each other and you're able to iterate really, really fast. Now, if you're part of the keynote in Unite, or if you even saw the Unite Copenhagen keynote, we introduced this feature where any changes that you make in one device, deployed device, be it mobile or a PC, whatever changes that you make in terms of material or shaders or even, in fact, subsequently even code, will automatically be linked directly to any other device. So you can be like the admin who changes things in your build. We also want to onboard you on the high performance world of dots, but you also want to retain the skills and workflow that you have. We don't want you to just throw away everything that you have learned in the past 13 years about Unity. So we are going to be introducing the conversion of game objects to entities for types that we already know of, such as like physics and rendering and transform. So all you have to really do is tag it with the script or place your objects within a subscene, and a new type will automatically be created to where it'll, I guess, dotsify your sub-elements automatically for you. So you don't have to like rewrite everything yourself. And entities 1.0, this is actually quite a big deal. We have this stability in all of these three systems that dots comprises of, which is the burst compiler, C# job system, and ECS. And we've been building that for the last 3 years now. So this will pretty much give you the maximum theoretical performance in pretty much any given hardware. And because this is a 1.0 release, it means it's a stable API and we are locking it down. This is not like a preview version or a 0.3 version. This is actually a 1.0 version. We also aim to support multiplay. Unit is of course getting deprecated. We'll still be supporting for the next 2 years in the 2018.4 LTS version. So if you are already using netcode, you're good for the next 2 years. But if you're beginning a new game, I would highly recommend that you kind of check out the dots netcode. So we are starting with this very server authoritative shooter solution that we kind of showcased in Unite India. And then we are going to be moving to providing more solutions for more genres like your MMO, RTS, and like GGPO games and so on. Physics, so this includes Unity Physics, which is already built into which is built on the top of the dots architecture, and we also are now introducing Havoc Physics directly inside Unity. So for those who are interested, you can actually go today and download the Havoc Physics package for Unity, which is fantastic. Then we talk about audio. So we continued, we're doing like continued work on the DSP graph features and optimizations to serve features as a foundation for our new audio stack. So the initial dots audio offering, it'll be part of it'll include the DSP graph and the dots tech stack, so which will allow you as users to really work on an optimized audio workflow for all of your audio needs. We're also going to be including artist tooling for dynamic audio authoring, so that you'll have a rock solid performant offering which works on dots and at the same time also very user friendly. This is actually pretty cool. A lot of people, programmers here would definitely love this. So certain types of object references don't survive the serialization and deserialization process. So for example, if I try to serialize in this code, if I try to serialize the tiger subclass, after deserialization, I'll just get back the cat subclass, the cat class. So now we have provided a serialized reference tag, which actually solves this issue, which is quite a big deal. This will create heart attack for a lot of people. Like if I have like 10,000 objects and you're trying to select them all, it will just take a lot of time. So we are aiming to deliver a faster and a better and stronger editor without glitches and breaks in the workflow, thanks to the performance optimizations that we are doing. So beginning 2020.1, you will see a lot of performance improvements. So including monitoring tools for the editor that will be shared with you, so that you will be able to spot errors and spot places where you can optimize right in the editor itself. All of this is actually right in the Unity website itself. So if you look at physics, profiling, package manager, more of those things are coming in 2019.3, which is releasing in the next few days. Yeah, 2020.1, we are going to be adding the editor speed, profiler, memory profiler, more improvements to the dot compliant data flow graph, and about the package management. So let's move on to workflow and content. So workflows, this is pretty much so that it scales along with your team. You want to have a big production, whether be it 5 people or 500 people, it should scale very well. So if you're talking about, so let's move about, just going to talk about that. So first is Asset Pipeline 2.0. This is the ability to do the dependency tracking. So it's more on caching assets. So many of you today, you cannot like cache your prefabs or shaders, for example. And this essentially talks about re-importing that over and over again. And now we are solving that because all of those will be cached. This is now going to be default in 2019.3. So because now all of your dependencies will be right in your cache database, and you don't have to keep re-importing that over and over again. We also have on-demand import. This is actually quite a big deal, because if you have a huge project, currently Unity imports everything, including creation of icons of all of those objects. Now you can, it's in 2019.3, it's kind of in an experimental mode, but if you install that in the package manager, you would just be able to selectively figure out what are the objects that you want to be importing, which is very useful, because sometimes you just have like junk in your project which you probably don't even want to get imported. We're also improving we're also introducing what is called the Accelerator. This is a collaborate teams feature that speeds up working together by fetching cached assets from the local server. So if your friend or your colleague has already imported a project, then that cache of that project will be on the server, so that when you open up the project, you don't have to keep re-importing and cache all of that. You can just get it back from the server, which means you will open it up super fast. We're also improving a lot on the version control system. I'm sure a lot of you are having like, pulling your hair out with the version control. But we'll make sure that these integrations that we have, especially in 2019.3 and 2020, and by the time of 2020.1, you'll have like a really rock solid foundation for version control. So with 2020, we'll be focused on making this like really a first class citizen, because earlier it was like a stepchild. And we're going to making a lot of great experience for even less technical folks when it comes to version control. We're also going to be optimizing the play mode, which allows you to handle scripts in runtime, which is actually quite awesome. So if you don't want to compile certain scripts, and if you already have, if you're not making a lot of changes, these things will just save a lot of time. This is my favorite feature, which is the device simulator. So, system information screen class usually gives you this back details about the computer that you're going to be testing. And this simulator actually tricks Unity into thinking that you're testing it on a genuine device. And you'll see the visual stats of of whatever that you're testing accurately on the screen class itself. And this is very useful for testing device logic specific to your project. So how does your game perform on, let's say, iPhone 4? And how does the game work out on an iPhone 10? You can just check all of that right now, right inside the editor, without actually deploying the build, which is amazing. This is what I literally just talked about. And that's how the screen looks. It also scales according to the screen size and whatnot. We also improved with 2019.3. If you're any beta testers here, beta users, yeah, cool. Thank you for beta testing, by the way. I really appreciate that, because all of your feedback is what really improves Unity. But one of the things that we have been hearing over and over again is the editor looks right? So we have improved the editor UI, and we have redesigned it so that it's a lot more legible, it's a lot more usable, and it is also a lot more performance. So it's got like this really modern font, flat design. All the icons icons are very, very clear. We have like hover states and improved selection, nice spacing between the UI and whatnot. So it looks a lot clearer than what you had earlier. We are also working on a panel overhaul. What you're seeing right now in the screen is just a work in progress concept art really, but things like if I am working on a tool which is specific to, let's say, Pro Builder. I don't have to keep selecting Pro Builder every time to see the options inside the inspector, because you have to either lock the inspector, which is kind of a very painful way, or a roundabout way of working. But now we are working on contextual UIs that just stay there. If you're using Pro Builder or if you're using ProGrid, for example, that UI will just stay on the screen, and the inspector will be on its own. So Nested Prefabs, of course, has got a lot of very positive feedback, and this feature lets you edit a prefab in the prefab mode while maintaining the context of that prefab in that scene. So it's going to be out to 2020.1 release. A lot of quality of life changes, so you'll see like many small changes, like tools like quick search, which is something I really like. You can it's now right now in the package manager, so if you're used to a Mac, you kind of have the quick search. Now you have the quick search right inside the Unity editor, where you can quickly search for objects that you're looking for. We also have like improved presets and other scene addition tools that you want to be adding inside the editor. We also have a single UI solution. So if you want to build on top of the editor tooling, so prior, if you are a web programmer, for example, you would be so used to like CSS style editor UI programming or UI design, which is kind of like the industry standard these days. And we are also introducing that in the Q1 of 2020, where you will be able to have this visual authoring style for your UI elements for both the editor and for your runtime UI. UI Builder, this is a visual tool that brings this web style UI elements into more like a drag and drop authoring workflow. And this is one that everyone has been waiting for, which is visual scripting. So this is, of course, something that who here is excited by this, right? Like I think most of now programmers, you'll be like, I don't know what I want to do this. Like this now, people will start making like weird looking graphs, and I have to go about optimizing it. I want to talk a little bit about that, because the dots, the visual scripting is dots based. So whatever code that is being generated by the visual scripting, it's dots based coding. Secondly, the most important thing is any graph that you create with this visual scripting graph will also be converted to readable code. So if you are a programmer, it's actually a very useful tool, because you can initially create a graph which will then convert to a C# code, and then you can modify the code directly, which is actually a very, very useful and powerful tool if you think about it. The visual scripting graph is currently available in the forums, so if you're interested to play around with it, you can go to the Unity forums and download it and play around with it. It's going to be in preview in 2020.1. The other one, we're also, because like I said, dots is pretty much the bedrock of what we're working on, so we are also reworking the dots animation system. So things like animation clip playback, animation blending, layering and masking, root motion, runtime rigging, animation events, all of that will be part of this new 2019.3 preview version of the dots animation. This is the kind of the demo that you're seeing here is what we showed at the Unite Copenhagen and Unite India keynote. Later on, we'll also be adding like a compositor on top of this, and also the state machine changes that you're used to. We are also modifying the skeleton animation using runtime constraints, so you're able to preserve the animation, which is actually a very nice feature. So you can just have a regular walk cycle and then start adding weights to it, and then modify it so that the animation adapts to whatever changes it's happening in the environment or inside your game. So Kinematica is also pretty cool. So you're able, it's a AI-based animation system, so it's automatically able to adopt the animated character for any, and also if you're having motion capture data, you're able to bring it, and it's automatically able to adapt that animation to make it look smooth and also make it look realistic inside your game. So there's a complete revamp of terrain to environment system. How many of you use terrains here? Yeah, and I'm sure you all love it, right? So this is encompassing the broader goals of 2020 itself. So we are going to be adding layers which allow you to handle game objects, to form parts of this terrain, and it can easily be switched in priority. The entire thing will be package based and is therefore a lot more flexible. So we have also this year introduced scriptable brushes. So we want to extend this feature to allow you to create more and more environment tools all by yourself. Shader graph and visual effect graph, which are two big features that we released earlier this year. Now there's going to be better integration of shader graph and visual graph talking to each other. So you'll be able to take full control of what is offered by shader graph and visual graph itself, and it's amazing. 2D people, anyone? 2D developers? Cool. So you'll love this. There's a ton of 2D features that have been we have introduced. So I'm not going to go through them one by one, but very quickly we introducing 2D animation systems, 2D pixel perfect systems, 2D Photoshop like PSD importer, 2D sprite shape, and 2D tile map editor. All of that is going to be part of this. And we also have a 2D shader graph compatibility, which is also introduced. And there are also experimental features in 2019.3, which will be verified by 2020.2, which includes like your 2D renderer. So if you're making 2D animated movies, that will also be rendered out of here. 2D lights, 2D shadows, and then a sprite swap feature within the 2D animation, which is also currently in experimental. If you were part of my talk day before yesterday in the VFX Summit, was anyone there except me? I talked a lot more in depth about the film and television pipeline that we have. So some of the things like Python integration, so you'll be able to and this is not only for film, even if you're a game programmer, you can still use Python support, which is now going to be supported with 2019.3. You also have shotgun integration. Wow, I see this guy going, what? Shotgun integration for your asset management pipelines. Your recorder, so you can export render passes. So if you're any filmmakers here? Animation movie makers. One of the things that people often ask about is like, I want a diffuse pass, I want a depth pass, I want a beauty pass and whatnot. You can now render that directly from the renderer, and you can then use that in your compositing app like Nuke or After Effects or whatever. We're also going to be supporting Linux. Linux editor will support all of these features that is available for the film and television things, and if you go to the package manager and if you just download the film and television pipeline, a film and television package from the package manager, you'll get all of this support automatically. Quickly to recap, more things that we are adding with 2019.3 is all of these, which I already talked about. And you can see all of these features in our Unity roadmap. I'm just rushing through it because I have to be on time. Next, let's look at quality and fidelity. So we introduced, of course, the scriptable render pipeline, and in that we have two templates now. One is called the universal render pipeline, which earlier used to be called the lightweight render pipeline. We now don't use that term anymore. We use universal render pipeline, and then we also introduced the high definition render pipeline. So talk about universal render pipeline. It focuses on your performance, and even your battery performance, your power, and whatnot, and it automatically focuses on customization and extensibility. You also have, because the entire scriptable rendering pipeline is open source, you have the ability to add your own custom render passes while you're still getting updates from Unity. And in 2020, we are going to be adding more deferred rendering for sophisticated lighting. We are also going to be adding even more high quality materials that you can get right out of the universal render pipeline. And we're also going to be introducing universal render pipeline for dots. So it's double whammy. So universal render pipeline is already meant to run on low-end devices, and it's already well optimized from a rendering point of view. And dots-based URP or a universal render pipeline is going to be pretty amazing. High definition render pipeline is finally going to be out of preview in 2019.3, so you can start using it in production. It's going to be version 1.0. It is meant for your console quality games or making films and animations, because those are all really high quality. Of course, similar to the universal render pipeline, it's also extremely extensible and you can modify the way you want it, because once again, it's open source. With 2020, we're adding the ability for you to inject custom post-processing effects and also custom passes while also still maintaining performance. We'll also be adding some features for offline rendering, just specifically for film and animation, which takes into account volumetrics and whatnot. More features that we are adding would be like physically based sky. We are adding improved quality of shadows with new algorithms that also make it significantly performant. We're also going to continue to expand on our area light features. Currently, area lights exist in high definition render pipeline, but they don't cast shadows. But we are going to be improving on that for you to also work on that. Ray tracing. So earlier this year, we worked with BMW and NVIDIA and lights and shadows to create this demo, and people really couldn't even make a difference whether it was shot with a real physical camera or was it just rendered out of Unity. The fidelity was extremely high. So we're also adding a full frame path tracer with ground truth GI. So it's very, very key for cinematics. It's key for artists to validate their content, and it'll also offer an offline ray tracer if you don't want to even have real-time ray tracing inside your game. Earlier this year, we announced a partnership with a company called Graphene, who are pretty much the leaders when it comes to streaming textures. That electric socket is excited by that. So it loads like very highly detailed textures. It chops it up and then it renders only the parts that you really need. So it's really like literally whatever the camera is going to be seeing. It's like sort of like I'd say occlusion culling for textures. And this is a very powerful thing because it gives ownership to the artist, because I know that artists often get yelled at for creating like high quality textures inside the game, but now you don't have to worry about that because this will automatically manage the memory for you and also provide you runtime performance and analysis for through the profiler. So that's pretty much it. Quality and fidelity, more and more features. So of course, I kind of talked about high definition data pipeline, ray tracing. Visual effect graph is also going to be out of preview. We are going to add more and more support to shader graph, more support to lighting, adding better algorithms for the progressive light mapper, which is also going to have a new GPU based light mapper. And then we're also adding a lot of things for 2D graphics, and all of this in 2019.3. 2020.1, we are going to be introducing the eye shader, so you will get like more realistic human beings, so you kind of get out of what is called the uncanny valley. We're also going to be working with 2D graphics for soft shadows, adding deferred renderer for universal render pipeline, and then 2D physics are also going to get a lot of improvements. So let's get to deploy and operate. So we want to reach the broadest audience with the maximum platform reach platform reach that you can have. So this means you have to find the global audience of players. You have to access stores that don't possibly exist. You have to access stores that possibly that you're not aware of, and you also want to keep all of your players engaged with live updates via a singular pipeline. So keeping all of this in mind, we have been building a lot of features. So first things first is Project Tiny built on top of dots. This has been a feature that we have been announcing since last year, and we have been working on it continuously. In fact, there's a separate roadmap talk on Project Tiny on YouTube, which was done during Unite Copenhagen. You should definitely check it out. But currently it's still in preview. It's going to be released for both 2D and 3D games, while also supporting mobile and web browsers. And it's releasing in 2020. Unity Distribution Portal, it's a fantastic portal for people so currently there is only App Store and Play Store, which is what most people are aware of. But there are other stores that you probably don't know of. Like for example, China alone has like some 500 stores that you don't know. And in India, we have like a Jio store, we have Airtel store, we have a whole bunch of stores. And it's the same story throughout Southeast Asia. Like Korea has a bunch of stores, Indonesia, Thailand, all of them have their own stores. So if you're a developer who have no idea where Moose store or One store, for example, is, or even how to submit to them, Unity Distribution Portal helps you with that. You can just go to Unity Distribution portal on a web page, upload your APK, and Unity will take care of, and you can select which are all the stores that you want to publish your content to. Unity has tie-ups with these stores, and it's completely free for you. You don't have to pay anything. You upload the APK, and Unity will, behind the scenes, unpack the APK, insert the SDK required by those stores, so that if you're doing in-app purchases or whatever, that gets automatically inserted for you. And then it gives the APK, submits the APK to those stores. A lot of stores are already being supported. More relevant to India, Geo Store is also going to be supported very, very soon. So we're working on that. We are going to be having full Stadia platform support. So Stadia, does everyone know Stadia? Who does not know Stadia? One person. So Stadia is the is Google's new streaming platform where you're able to directly play games without actually having to download the game. It just streams. And now our platform integration for Stadia support is almost complete. So preview builds will be out in 19.3. It will still be in beta, and we are expecting the final 19.3 when it comes out to have the full Stadia support. So when 19.3, which is still in preview, when it comes out, you'll have full ability to support Stadia. But the number of developers who have access to the Unity Stadia builds itself is currently very, very limited. And that's from Google itself. They want to have only like limited support for that. But you can reach out to Google. We have friends from Google here, and you can figure out how to get access to this to be part of this program. But of course, there are many things that your team can do in parallel while waiting for these public versions of Stadia and Unity to come out. So we have like this checklist which makes it where you can check whether your build is ready for Stadia. So you can essentially go to download 2019.3 beta version. You can build for Linux. You have to check that it only supports Vulkan, and then also compile it with IL2 CPP, and then you're done. So if you do all of these steps, your game is automatically ready for Stadia. AR Foundation is right now supported for, of course, iOS and for ARKit and AR Core. We are also extending support for Magic Leap and HoloLens 2. So any AR application that you're going to be creating with AR Foundation can be deployed to all of these 4 platforms instantaneously. Unity as a library, it's quite exciting. So you don't really need to actually create an executable only out of Unity. You can use Unity as a library to insert it or embed it inside your own native application. So this is an example where, I don't know if that's playing. So let's say you have a native application like the one that you see here on the screen, which is built on Android, like Java, using the Android development kit. And you can then, let's say you want to use an AR, extend the AR functionality that Unity is so good at. Oh, there it is. And you can essentially switch between native and Unity within and embed the Unity made application right inside your native editor, which is pretty cool. We also are simplifying our content distribution. So it's a 3-part system to help you to manage and build and deploy your content. And each part of the system can, of course, be used in isolation. It does not have to be it doesn't always have to be tied together. And so this system essentially unlocks the potential for all developers to create whatever you want. You can deliver new worlds, new characters, new levels, new whatever, with less worry about how to go about doing it. In fact, we gave a talk about pretty much all of that during Unite India, and all of those talks will be uploaded to YouTube very, very soon, which is essentially addressable, scriptable build pipeline and cloud content delivering. Matchmaking is very, very near and dear for all people who are making multiplayer. So how do you want to group these players together? We're going to be providing a solution for that, which is just off-the-shelf matchmakers. It's pretty much all rule-based, and you have to just be creative about how you want this to work, which is essentially how your game matchmaking needs to be working. And you can define the logic of how to construct a group of players, and we bring you pretty much all the flexibility and all the tooling that you would need, so that you don't have to worry about whether it's going to be working on one platform and does it not work on another platform or whatnot. It just works across all platforms globally. Security is very important to us. Because you just have one ID, we are now streamlining how player data is captured and used, which is making it simpler for you to be compliant with privacy regulations. Because every country has their own privacy regulations, and we take care of that. And it also helps with cross-platform play. So keeping things in sync. So if there's one player who's playing one of your games in Android, and the same player is playing another game that you made on iOS, all of the data will be synced together in a very compliant fashion. So that's deploy and build, deploy and operate. So you have, so quickly going through platform support, talked about that, Google Stadia support, it's going to be out of preview in 2019.3. And then more support to mobile devices. So things like Unity as a library, on-demand rendering, Android. Oh, this is actually my favorite ones. Android correct dependencies. So currently, if you are deploying for Android, you have to download the SDK and the JDK version and the NDK version manually, and it's a process. But now there is a button inside the Unity editor where it'll just download the correct JDK and NDK for you. You don't have to actually search about seeing like which NDK or JDK works, which is pretty cool. So OpenGL ES is going to be deprecated on iOS, which is quite important for iOS developers. There's going to be Android Logcat integration directly inside the Unity editor. And you're also going to have Unity editor based iOS and Android local notifications editor right there. For anyone who's developing for consoles, the high definition ender pipeline is now ready to be deployed for both PS4 and Xbox One. If you're using Unit, we'll be supporting Unit encryption. And what else? For desktop, web, and server, there's going to be Xcode project generation right from macOS, but it's going to be a lot more integrated. Then what else is interesting? Then there's the new addressables workflow for you to create and deploy assets. So it's kind of like an evolution of asset bundles. More support on 2019.3 is HDRP also supports VR now, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. And AR Foundation I also talked about. Addressables, I already talked about that. Again, I'm just rushing through this. All of this is available in the Unity roadmap, so you can kind of figure out what makes sense. So I'm just going to quickly go through that. So let's go to the summary. I'm going back to this graph. So I talked about all of the end user friendly applications, which are essentially adding to your performance and adding to your to the Unity application, like what happens behind the screen, so that your users get the maximum bang for the buck when when you're playing your games on a mobile device, so that your power consumption doesn't go down. I also talked about how we're also adding machine-friendly tools such as your dots architecture. We're also adding entities, so that the way in which your application is running is also very, very smooth. And we also talked about human-friendly applications such as improvements to the Unity editor, improvements to visual scripting, not improvements, adding visual scripting, improvements to how you can work with nested prefabs, for example, and then all of this will tie together through the automatic conversion workflow, so that you are still using the editor that you're so used to, the Unity editor, and there is so many things happening behind the scenes, especially in terms of the dots architecture. And with this automated conversion workflow, it'll convert all of your existing workflow to a dots-based workflow, so that you get all of your performance by default, and you have the most performant game and the best-looking game that you have around. So core and performance, workflow and creation, quality and fidelity, deploy and operate were pretty much what I talked about.